deck for tonight. 3 are on tap, including Jets and Steelers out in Pittsburgh. Mike McCarthy will go with Will Howard to start things off after saying he saw everything he needed from Mason Rudolph, but expect Drew Allar to see plenty of time on the field to see who maybe gets that roster spot behind Rudolph and Aaron Rodgers. We'll get to the other games as well, but let's bring in Tyler Sullivan and Emory Hunt. First things first, Jets and Steelers. So we're going to get to Aaron Rodgers and the season projections in just a little bit here. But, Sully, I'll give you first word because in some ways it could be Allar versus Howard depending on what they do with Rudolph. But that's a lot of quarterbacks on staff to begin with here. What are you just looking out for when it comes to the younger guys?
Yeah, I think when you look at both of these young quarterbacks, you are kind of not necessarily auditioning for 2027. You have to focus on a roster spot, but it is kind of the elephant in the room, right? That you have a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers that's in his early 40s, already announced that it's his final year in the NFL. You need to do everything you can to endear yourself to the organization that you could potentially not just be a person that could be at the back end of the roster for 2026, but to potentially be the guy for 2027. Now, they're going to have options beyond what they have on the roster right now for next year. But if you can go out there, let's just say Drew Allar, for example, and continue what you did in that first preseason game where you went 10 of 13, 3 total touchdowns, yes, albeit in the second half of a preseason game. But if you can continue to show strides of improvement, that's only going to make you a more intriguing prospect for the long term. So as much as that may help you for making the roster in 2026, you're also quasi-auditioning for 2027.
You know what's fascinating about this whole thing, guys? I feel like it's multi-layered. Number one, you look at this from a scouting perspective. Which quarterback out of Will Howard and Drew Allar do you feel comfortable with exposing to waivers? It's definitely not Drew Allar. So let's say the decision probably is already made there. We can expose Howard, and then he can come back and revert to our practice squad, right? And then you go to the on-the-field perspective. I love how Will Howard competes. We saw him in that last 2-minute drive before the half. He was able to march the team down the field to get a point, preferably a touchdown.
Really likes the approach they're taking with the work they're putting
all
in.
Throughout the time
It's
he's
awesome.
out there. And for Drew Allar, there were 2 instances in the game last week that kind of showed up on his tape at Penn State. Can he consistently hit the layups? And we saw one play to Riley Nowakowski in the flat, the fullback. He threw it in a poorly placed spot. He dropped it. Then he came back the next drive and hit Caden Weegett for a touchdown on the same exact play to the opposite side of the field. And so you want to see him be more consistent in that way. But I think this is a situation where both guys can be on the roster in 2027 as potentially your quarterback 1 and your quarterback 2.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can technically go with 4 quarterbacks, but
some
the
of the
math just
players
doesn't
on
usually math,
offense.
and you end up being
Every
spots.
morning
So
here at
it'll be
Steelers-
interesting to see, at least I am, how it all plays out behind Aaron Rodgers, who's, speaking of, 42-year-old, basically calling it a career after this year, pulling out the Dwayne Wade card in the NBA and having his farewell tour this year, Emory. So given that we're not going to see him against his former team tonight, but what are your expectations for him this season out in Pittsburgh with Mike McCarthy?
You know what, guys? I feel like he's going to go out with a bang. And in terms of what they have built around him, I like the run game this year a lot better
With
than
head
last
coach
season.
Mike McCarthy, he shares with us the biggest focus for the day.
In terms of the draft prospects that they brought in, Jeremy Bernard and Caden Weegett and Eli Heidenreich and all of these guys that they brought in on offense to help out Aaron Rodgers. The offensive line looks retooled, and you still have good options at wide receiver in Michael Pittman and DK Metcalf, along with a slew of tight ends. So this team on both sides of the ball looks to be the best team collectively in Pittsburgh in probably some time. So I feel like Aaron Rodgers is set up to go deep into the season, deep into the postseason, if all things check out medically and healthy with this roster. But I like the way that he set up this last go-around in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you can make the case, and Emory just did, that he's more set up this year than he was last year in his first year in Pittsburgh. The question for me is he going to be a better quarterback than he was last year, or is he going to be like we've seen with some other quarterbacks who have announced that it's their final year in the NFL, or any other player when it's their final year in the NFL? You kind of have your one foot out the door. You're making some business decisions out there, not necessarily wanting to get hit. I kind of think we saw that a little bit from Aaron Rodgers last year in terms of when you look at the yards per attempt. a lot lower in terms of where he ranked among qualified quarterbacks. I think he was like 27th out of 33 quarterbacks last season. But I do think, and Emery pointed it out, this roster, this offense is more catered to Aaron Rodgers this season. You can even point to the head coach as well, the familiarity with Mike McCarthy. But I think Michael Pittman is an underrated piece for Aaron Rodgers. I think that I just noted that yards per attempt, doesn't want to get hit. One guy that can win short and intermediate is Michael Pittman. And so as much as DK Metcalf will be the deep threat, I think that he will pepper Michael Pittman in this offense along with Jaylen Warren out of the backfield. So I do think that this offense around Aaron Rodgers should set him up for success. It's just a matter of will health permit.
This could be the year the Steelers get a win in the postseason, which certainly hasn't happened since Big Ben was around almost 10 years ago. Jets would just like to get there if they can, right? But of course, they're going through a full rebuild right now. And you guys are kind of on the same page when it comes to the biggest issue for the Jets this season. And Emery, I'll give you first word since that's up near your neck of the woods.
It's the passing game consistency, because you would have to assume, guys, that the Jets, with their offensive line and their trio of backs in the backfield, they will be able to run the football. You also have to assume, with the improvements they made with the personnel on defense, they'll catch one, an interception, but two, they'll be much better on defense. So the only question is, can they get the most out of the passing game to be a complement to this, what we expect to be this run game? And that's why you bring in a Geno Smith, because you put Geno Smith in an advantageous situation like he was in Seattle. We had a good offensive line and a good run game. We know Geno Smith has one of the best arms in the game. He should be able to eat in the passing game, but that's the biggest question about this Jets football team I have moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Mine's Geno Smith. I just wonder, what version of Geno Smith are we going to get? Are we going to get that Seattle version where, if that happens, you are talking about more wins for the New York Jets than maybe they're accustomed to or maybe even expected this season, because they do have a lot of intriguing pieces around him. It's a better offensive line than he dealt with in Las Vegas last year. It's a better collection of skill position players, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, go down the list there. But if he is the Las Vegas version, well, then you're talking about someone who just led the NFL in interceptions last year, and it really won't matter what skill position players, won't matter what the offensive line looks like. If he's giving the ball to the opposition, then we're going to go haywire throughout the season. It'll be a typical year for the New York Jets. So it really comes down to what version at 35 years old Geno Smith is going to be in 2026.
All right, let's tackle the other preseason games. Panthers and Jags tonight. We're talking about two former top overall picks at quarterback, and Bryce Young and Trevor Lawrence. Sully, when you look at this, I think the Jags playoff exit was a little more disappointing than the Panthers here, but just how are you entering a conversation of 2026 when it comes to Young and Lawrence?
Yeah, it certainly is more disappointing for the Jaguars, because I feel like their ceiling's higher. I think that this team right now, with Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence going into year 2 of this tandem, I do think that Lawrence has an extremely high ceiling. I was just looking up, he's 20-1 to win MVP. You look at those final 8 games last season, led the NFL in total touchdowns. I mean, if he carries that type of play over for the course of a full regular season, that 20-1 is looking real enticing. Of course, you play in a difficult division when you account for the Texans defense, but if CJ Stroud goes sideways, that's a team that could win the division, the Jaguars, and you're talking about another season of playoff contention. When you look at Bryce Young in the Carolina Panthers, kind of backed into a division title last year. It was one of the weirder divisions in the NFL, 3 teams going 8-9, and yet somehow Bryce Young is somehow going throw for throw with Matthew Stafford in a playoff game, kind of putting them on upset alert for a second there. Ultimately, it didn't work out, but this is a more pivotal year for Bryce Young than it is for Trevor Lawrence, in the fact that he is still looking for a contract. Got his 5th-year option picked up this year, but is still looking for that long-term commitment from the Carolina Panthers. And the situation around him has improved. You're talking about a defense that is up and coming. You brought in a number of different pieces in free agency. You have Ted McMillan going into year 2. I'm high on a guy like Jalen Coker opposite of him at wide receiver. So there are intriguing pieces. The question is, can we see more consistency from Bryce Young? And if we do, we're talking about a team that maybe could get back in the playoffs. And from Bryce Young's perspective,